Hi YouTube friends, it's Anna. The very first video I publicly made for this channel, in that one I was talking about why I was homeschooled. And that video was a really big deal to me because it felt like a really tough and vulnerable story to tell to the world. But I also felt like it was a really important story to share with people. And I've gotten a lot of positive reactions from that. People that recognized themselves in the struggles that I had with education. Also parents that are homeschooling their children now. So I felt like it was really worth it and it was important for me to share that story. So that video was about my struggles with the education system and my very personal story of how I ended up being homeschooled because of those struggles I was having with the education system. So just a very specific perspective on homeschooling. And in that video, I really only touched the surface of what I think about homeschooling in a broader sense. So in this video, I want to address the question, what do I think about homeschooling in a general sense? What do I really think about homeschooling? You know, this talk exists where people are considering if homeschooling should be legal at all. And to that question, I will definitely say yes. I think homeschooling should always be an option. And I think, in my opinion, it comes down to that parents should always have the freedom to choose what they think is best for their child. One cannot decide for a large group of individuals what is best for them. You cannot make one big system of education that works for every child. There is no one size fits all in education because really the world has such a diversity psychologically, and each child has their individual needs and their individual way of learning that best suits them. And I think it's a duty of the parents to do anything they can to create the best possible environment for their child to grow into a strong human being that can live up to their full potential. And that probably sounds like something that any parent would want for their child, yet I feel like it is increasingly becoming a problem in our society that parents are outsourcing the responsibility for their child's needs to third parties, to professionals, as we call them, to school teachers and to daycare teachers. So for a large percentage of the time, parents are outsourcing the responsibility of their child to a system, a school system or a daycare system, etc. So like I was saying, that poses the problem that the school you are trusting that responsibility for your child's need with does not fit with the individual psychology of your child. Schools and daycares are systems that are made to function for larger groups, and it is really, really far from ideal on an individual level, I would say, especially because it is simply not possible to facilitate the individual needs of the children. So there is this kind of assumption that all children would have approximately the same needs in education, which is really not the case in how I see it. So, like if that school system or childcare system doesn't fit with the psychology of the child, that could really result in very purposeless suffering for that child. So you might suggest to put your child in another school then, and look for a school system that better fits with their personal needs. And I would say that probably is a wise idea in some cases. Definitely an option to consider as a parent. But there is a problem with that, at least here in the Netherlands. And that is that public schools, they are really regulated by the government, and they have to meet certain criteria because of that. And so schools that have a special vision, they are really not able to actually teach according to that vision, because that vision doesn't fit well enough with the criteria of the government. So for example, the Montessori schools in the Netherlands, all of them are basically not Montessori schools anymore, because if they would follow the true Montessori system, they would not be in alignment with the criteria that the government imposes on schools. So I know in the US, public schools are also, the curriculum is regulated by the state. So it's probably the same situation, and you can only find alternative schools that are private, and of course those are very expensive, so it's kind of out of the question for normal people to even consider that. So homeschooling in all possible forms, it offers the best option to tailor the education to your child. And there are many different forms of homeschooling. So like within that you have a lot of options. And I mean like working together with other parents or doing stuff individually. Like educating your child with a lot of autonomy or following more of a strict curriculum. Those kind of variations, they are endless. And homeschooling parents, as I know them, they are people that are very dedicated to giving their child the best possible environment and education. And when you are putting your child in public school or any school, really, you are outsourcing the responsibility, like I was saying. And in that way, you do basically have the option to turn a blind eye to your child's needs to some extent, because they just have to function within that system. And it's kind of feels maybe for parents that it's not their responsibility when the needs of the child are not met in that environment. So it's possible for them to turn a blind eye to some extent, also to things that are going less well for the child in the school environment. And homeschooling parents, they really do not have that option to turn a blind eye, because when you are homeschooling your child, you basically have to manually create the whole situation where, you create this environment and this learning program where your child's needs are all met. So in that way, homeschooling is really doing it the hard way for parents. One of the biggest criticisms about homeschooling is that people talk about the echo chamber that would exist around homeschooled children, because children wouldn't be challenged enough to go through difficult things, and and they wouldn't be challenged enough to see different points of view because they are in such a limited circle of people. And as an answer to that criticism, I'm going to say, yes, that could definitely be a problem. I would consider that a weak point of homeschooling, that echo chamber. So with that in mind, I think parents should really take the responsibility to do anything they can to prevent that problem from happening. So it's really the parents' responsibility to help their children to learn to overcome obstacles, to get to where they want to be, to get to things that they want to achieve. Because that's a very important thing to learn, to create strong adult individuals, like how to overcome obstacles for a higher purpose. And it's also really the parents' responsibility to expose their child to many different people, and that's both for adults and children, because obviously like children need to play with other children, but I also think it's very important and beneficial that children get exposed to different adult people, because by being around different adults, I think children can really see different sides of life and learn different things, have different perspectives on things. And also, very importantly, I think by being around other people, you can get to know different sides of yourself. Because the child is like absorbing the habits and the thoughts of people around them, basically. I think also an additional pro to exposing your child to different adults is that by like being able to connect with different adults and feeling safe around them, having that connection can really increase the trust and safety of the child, and they can really take that with them even as adults. That can really lay a good foundation for that. Another thing that I hear often about homeschooling is school is important because you learn to do things that are hard and that you don't want to do. And the whole issue with that is that I think it really comes down to the question, what am I suffering for? I think you really need to think about that. You need to think about that as a parent for your child. What is my child suffering for? But maybe even for yourself as an adult person. What am I suffering for? What do we want to teach our children? Is it that suffering for a bigger purpose is a really beautiful thing and that you can get a lot of fulfillment out of that? Like an example of that would be when you have to wake up several times in one night to feed your newborn baby, and that's a situation that very obviously serves a higher purpose because you are raising a human being, but still it can be considered as a kind of suffering that you have to go through. So I think that's a very beautiful thing to teach to children. But my question is, can we say the same thing about all that is happening, all the suffering that is happening at school, and maybe even all of the suffering that we adults nowadays are suffering in our jobs? Something within this team that I noticed and struggled with as a child is that some people, adult people, seemed to be like, I had to suffer this experience of going to school. And it didn't work for me. It was very hard for me too. It was a lot of suffering, but you have to go through this suffering too, because I went through that suffering. It is normal. But I again want to ask the question, wouldn't you rather want to break out of that cycle and teach the new generation to live a fulfilling life? Because I do think that it is a problem of our current society that people feel very unfulfilled. So it might be interesting to see where the root of that problem lies. And I would say it might very likely start with how we educate our children. So that's something to think about. So, short summary to answer the question, what do I think about homeschooling, is really it comes down to that parents should do anything they can to fulfill the needs of their children and to have them grow up to strong, fulfilled individuals. And if parents decide if that's best situation is homeschooling, awesome. Now it's time for the parents to look really, really well at how they are going to, again, provide that environment with much input from others as well. And connection and challenge and learning, all of it for their child. And essentially, I think the responsibility to create that environment should be something that all parents, no matter what kind of education they in the end choose for their children, that's a responsibility that all parents should take. And I think most homeschooling parents take that very seriously. Because homeschooling is not the easy way. They really choose it because they want to create that best environment for their child, and because they see that that's not in school for them. Of course, there will also be homeschooling situations that are less ideal, parents that do struggle to meet all of those needs of the children. That's just realistic. And I think it would be good to have ways to offer supervision and help for those parents. And I think the best way to provide that would be within the homeschooling community itself. Because the people that are within the homeschooling community, they know best how homeschooling actually works. And if you would bring in professionals from schools, that wouldn't really work, I think, because it's such a different kind of thing. So, I think help and supervision from within the homeschooling community would be best. So, nothing in life is ideal, but for sure, I think it's very important that there are these different options so that every child can get the best possible education, the best possible childhood possible. So I think that's it for this video. I would say this really is a different kind of video than I usually do. And that might have to do with how serious this topic is for me. This topic is very, very dear to my heart, and I've had very personal experience with it, and expressing my thoughts about it is quite hard for me, also because there's this emotional charge behind all of it. So maybe I was a bit more serious than I usually am. I would love to read in the comments what you thought about this video, or what your experiences are with homeschooling, what you think about homeschooling. Whatever you feel like sharing, I enjoy reading. And if you like this video, give this video a like and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel so you can be up to date on when I post. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Hopefully see you next time. Bye.